Welcome back to the engine build. I'm going to pick up exactly where we left off last video. We're going to dig a little bit deeper into this motor, finish getting it set up, get it ready to go into my car, and then as always, I also have more parts to go over as well. If you remember in the last video, I noted that there was a crack in this valve cover, and that is why I have a brand new one right here. So this is going to get prepped, primed, and then get some wrinkle red paint in traditional Honda fashion. Now, in addition, I have the holy grail, prepare yourself for this, an OEM FK8 oil pan. This oil pan was extremely hard to get a hold of because they're on a nationwide back order. So I finally got it after waiting a while. I returned the AutoZone pan. I got a refund, and we're going to be able to put the OEM one on the motor. I know, it's pretty rare. One at a time, ladies. Calm down. So with all the covers off, the next step here is to take off the Accord pickup and the pump. Here I have a Type R oil pump system, and I realized I am missing the Type R pickup. So I have to get that, but we can start to take this apart and get this started. Once switching to the Type R oiling system, this gear moves over to here, which means this tensioner changes and it's a different tensioning system. So this goes away. If you look at pictures of the Type R, you can see this tensioner is replaced with a cover. I cannot find this cover. Honda can't find this cover. So what I'm gonna do is I'm gonna take this off, put it on a sheet of aluminum, trace it, cut it out, drill holes so I can use these bolts here, and then Honda bond it on, and that should work as damn, I can't talk today. Sufficient cover. What you are looking at here is a forged from factory K20 C4 bottom end. Everything looks good, rods, pistons, crank, all of it looks healthy. We're gonna get the baffle plate on here, oil pump on, and then wrap up the bottom end. Looking at these side by side, the Accord has a big pump, small baffle. Type R has a big baffle, small pump. The reason for that is because the Accord has balancers in it that make it smoother and better for low and mid-range, whereas the Type R is made for higher RPM, and it's not meant for comfort, it's made for performance. Given that I'm waiting on that tiny little pickup piece, I can't really move too much further for today, but what we can do is scrape off all of this old Honda bond and get the surface clean and prepped for the new oil pan, and then do the same with the timing cover. To clean this, I'm going to use a razor, and I can already hear people crying, no, you can't use a razor, you're gonna scratch it. Guess what? I'm still gonna use a razor. And that is because they work well. As long as you're not a total idiot and you don't take the razor and jam it into it, you're fine. So you want to be careful when using a razor, but as long as you're careful, you'll be totally fine. I've never had an issue before. Be careful, none of it falls into your motor. Anything other than oil is not good for your motor. It doesn't hurt to have a rag, something like that. It is the next day and I have good news. Tomorrow, everything I need to put the motor back together should be here. So that means today I'm going to prep and paint this valve cover so I can have this ready. And then tomorrow, the goal is to get the entire motor back together. This is a brand new valve cover because my last one was cracked. And what sucks about these is that they're made of plastic. And plastic is notoriously more difficult to paint to stick to. But same principles still apply. Red Scotch-Brite is going to be used to prep it, light coat of primer, and then I'm going to be using VHT Wrinkle Plus Red. I used it on my last valve cover and I had good luck with it, so it should work fine with this one. To buy one of these painted, a lot of these companies charge $500 or $600, which is just absurd to me, when you could easily reuse your valve cover, paint it yourself for a fraction of the cost, and it'll come out pretty good. You can actually now see and feel the whole surface is scuffed, which allows the paint to stick to it and actually adhere, but it makes quite a mess. So the next step, we're gonna clear off all of this debris, get all the grease, any dirt, anything that might be on there, clean it all off so that the paint sticks to it as best as possible. Also be sure, mask off anything you don't want paint on. first coat is drying right now. My mic isn't working, so sorry for the audio. But they say 5 minutes in between each coat and at least 3 coats. And with wrinkle paint, you want to apply it pretty heavy. You don't want it to run, but you want it to be thicker because you need thicker paint in order to get that wrinkle finish. So we're going to do 3 coats, then let it dry, and then go over it with a heat gun to help it bring out that wrinkle look. It is once again a new day, and we are back in the garage with a painted valve cover. And admittedly, it's not perfect, but overall, I thought it came out pretty good, especially for how cheap it was, a $20 rattle can. So now we're going to get this motor back together so that can go on. I also got the pickup piece for the oil pump, so that's ready, and that means we can get this baffle plate on, get the oil pump on, and then put the oil pan on. There's actually a small oil jet right here that has to get removed and covered because you'll notice the Type R baffle plate covers it up. So this gets used with the Accord, but not on the Type R oil pump. So we're gonna pull that and seal it up. So I noticed that this oil pump actually has timing marks on it, and that means that it has to be set in time. Timing chain has to come off, everything has to be lined up, whatever. It's actually not a big deal because I was gonna have to take it off anyway and take the cams off. And I'm sure you guys are now wondering, why are you taking the cams off? So this is a good time to change subjects and talk about VTEC again. And I've mentioned before, the SI ECU isn't programmed to run VTEC. So the options are no VTEC, turn VTEC on 24/7, or find a way to create a window so VTEC turns on at a certain RPM. And I have decided to go with VTEC all the time. And I know there's gonna be people complaining, oh, you're gonna get bad gas mileage, oh, it's not gonna drive. Look at me. Look, do I look like I care about gas mileage? That's what I thought. Fuck gas.
Fuck gas.
I understand, yes, it's gonna have driving oddities, it's gonna be a little weird at certain RPMs, but I want to go with VTEC all the time because it's going to make more power than the low profile cams. And to go with the option, say, of creating a window switch, it's a little more complicated. It hasn't necessarily been done. And I think just going with VTEC all the time would be the easiest route to go. And it's also going to sound cooler. Pretty obvious choice there. For turning on VTEC all the time, I thought about doing it electronically and wiring something to the VTEC solenoid. But the issue with that is every time you turn the car off, it loses power, VTEC will turn off, and it can lead to binding. So the most reliable way to have VTEC all the time would be to go with VTEC pins. So it locks the rockers together so that VTEC is always on. But the issue is there's no VTEC pins for these cars. There are on some of the older motors, but not on these motors. At least no company could confirm the fitment. So I'm gonna have a CNC guy create custom locking pins for me to have the rockers locked and have VTEC permanently on, locked mechanically. And at this point, I'm tired. I have my toe warmer here. It's freezing, it just snowed. So I'm gonna call it a night and come back tomorrow and we'll start taking the cams off.
Yeah, it should be timed, right?
Should be. That's always the best response. Should be timed, right? That looks right. Like
Yeah, looks
this and this line up in between the 2 gold links.
Falls over because a fucking hole the size of GT4.
Bruh.
All right. Whew. The L15 didn't have a. Well, I know it's obviously in time right now.
And then like
You can take off the tensioner. Just make sure you have a pin in there to hold it to stop it from extending. Oh, there's like a filter on here. It's gonna be the craziest background audio ever.
our besties now.
Oopsies, my bad.
Oopsie.
That's just so good for
There we go. La-da-dee, la-da-doo, la-da-doo. Bada boop.
Yeah.
It's your high pressure fuel pump. Yeah, that's 87.
Oh, wow.
And come on. Comment below if you agree that softball girls are built like gorillas.
Bro, softball and field hockey girls are built like
Time
fucking
to-
like fridges. Bro, when you see a softball girl or a field hockey girl running downfield, it's like one of those Samsung dual screen fridges with the built-in freezer. Just these big ass brick walls. I think softball girls are the equivalent of an F450.
F450 duly limited platinum. King Ranch.
36,000 towing capacity.
Fuck! Comment below how many bullets you think will fall in the oil. Yeah.
How long was it down for?
Come on.
Keep track.
Yes. Fucking kid. Who is this guy? I've never seen this. How do you get in this garage? I've never seen this guy before. Yo, some random dude just walked in here, but we're letting him chill.
Hey.
So this big lobe here drives the high pressure fuel pump. It's really interesting. So the fuel pump is cam driven. I have like an hour of footage. My phone is gonna kill itself trying to back up all these videos. I had to get a little bit of help and I did this off camera, but clearly the cam is off. You always wanna take very good care of these, keep everything in order as I said, but with just a little bit of prying, a little bit of hammering, managed to get it off. Hopefully you guys now notice better lighting, better microphone, rest in peace $20 mic, but I spent a good chunk of change on some better equipment, so hopefully you guys notice an improvement in production quality. What's cool about this is you can actually now see how VTEC works. When VTEC is off, these move independently. So the outer cams, the smaller cams, drive the rockers. When VTEC is on, if you look inside here, there's these little pins. There's one. And when VTEC is on, these all lock together and the rockers move as one individual unit, similar to what you'd see here. And in that case, it's gonna be driven by the center, larger cam. The reason I explain that is so you can understand exactly what we're doing. The objective is to take these rockers out and then create a pin instead of 3 individual segments, one pin that's gonna lock all of them together all the time, and hence permanently lock the VTEC. I actually had to get some help from Honda on how to exactly remove these rockers, and what I learned is that this thermostat housing has to come off. Then there's a little nut right there, or bolt, that has to come out, and then this right here, this bolt has to come out as well, and then it should slide out as one rod. But there's one important thing you're gonna wanna do, and that is get some zip ties. Sounds odd, but by zip tying the rockers together, it's gonna prevent them from essentially exploding when you take them off. Because inside of here, these little pins have springs in them, and all 3 little segments would shoot out if you were to take this rod apart, and it would be a disaster. So each set of rockers has to be zip tied together, and that'll keep them from coming apart. And it's also important to note, you wanna keep everything in order, as with everything else on the engine. Ah, shit. Now it's kind of a weird design, but it was actually surprisingly easy to get these out. This means that tomorrow I'm gonna take those rockers to the machine shop and actually start working on getting custom pins made. Now check these out. These are essentially one-of-one custom VTEC locking pins. As you see next to the original, instead of 3 segments, it's now 1 piece. So I have a rocker here with 1 installed, and now it is 1 unit. It'll move as 1 instead of 3 individual, which means VTEC is now locked. And what's really cool is he even managed to incorporate the little spring at the end. So what that's gonna do is keep pressure on the rod perfect fitment right there, and it's gonna stop it from moving around. I actually have a whole breakdown on the analysis of what these are made of and a ton of other details. I wanna give a huge shout out to Accurate Machine. Tony is a great guy. I even have 4 extra of these. If anybody is doing this and happens to want them, let me know. I have 4 extra, but huge shout out to Tony. If you need any machine work done, he's the guy. Now, I know I've said this before, but I should have everything I need to put the motor together. So what I'm gonna do is I have a couple hours. I'm gonna set up the camera, do a time lapse so I can just lock in, take the time to get as much done as I can. Hopefully I can get everything back together today. We'll see, but this is the final stretch right here. I have all the bits and pieces, so it's just a matter of getting the motor back together. I almost forgot, the opening for the old tensioner still needs to be covered up. So here I have the old tensioner, and then I have a sheet of aluminum that we use for welding. So I'm simply going to trace this out, cut it out, and then Honda bond it over the old opening to cover it up. Obviously, I still have some loose ends to tie up, but for the most part, this is it. This is complete, and it's finally closed up, and it's just been crazy the past few weeks. With this project, outside of this project, I've had so much going on, but I'm so glad to finally have this together. And I'm behind on content, so I'm gonna edit this as fast as possible so I can get this out to you guys. A lot covered in this, but the motor is together. From here, I have some little bits to tie up here. I can actually mostly assemble this motor, so I can put the trans, the downpipe, all the bolt-ons on, I think mostly, before putting it in the car, which makes it that much easier. So it kind of goes in as a whole assembly, and then there's just some lines and little bits you have to put together. But going forwards, it's about time that I take the motor out of my car, and then I can start transferring over some bits and moving forwards.